The International Women's Day is celebrated the world over on the 8th of March. The day aims to help nations worldwide eliminate discrimination against women. It also focuses on helping women gain full and equal participation in global development. Several resolutions to protect women's rights have also been passed globally, which has opened up broader avenues for the growth and development of women in our society. But despite these, and especially in developing countries, discrimination and inequality is still a major issue. Nigeria still has a lot of laws in place which discriminates against women. But how did the British solve these gender-based issues, given that many of the Nigerian laws were based on the model they left behind? These and more were the questions I put to my guest, the British High Commissioner to Nigeria. She was appointed to the position in November 2018. Prior to this, she was the British ambassador to Zimbabwe from 2014. She has extensive experience representing the UK in many capacities, and at one time she was the Director of Human Rights and International at the Ministry of Justice. A passionate advocate of women's rights, I began the interview by asking what the theme "Choose to Challenge" really means to her.
Choosing to challenge means standing up and challenging gender discrimination wherever we see it. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenge comes change. So let's choose to challenge and adopt the choose to challenge pose. For the sub-theme of this year is also women in leadership, and that's particularly what the UK government will be focusing on, overcoming barriers to women reaching leadership positions, whether in politics, in the arts, in medicine, in the armed forces, in diplomacy, and standing up for those to remove those barriers and to act as role models for those of us who have managed to achieve and overcome those barriers ourselves.
Nigeria still has a lot of laws in place which discriminates against women. Section 26 of the Nigerian Constitution, for example, discriminates against women in the area of citizenship rights. At most workplaces also, motherhood is still not recognized as a social function that deserves compensation. So can you please share with us how Britain has resolved these issues, given that many of the Nigerian laws we borrowed from the British?
Yes, indeed. Well, the landmark for us was in 2010 when we introduced the Gender Equality Act, which essentially discriminated any form of prejudice and bias against women. This sexual orientation, for example. So we have something called the Public Sector Equality Duty, which makes it a responsibility of employers, wherever they are, for example, to not discriminate against anyone under account of any of those characteristics, including gender. So it started with gender, but it's now much more mainstreamed into our legal frameworks and into our best practices. So I think we've come a long way, but it has been a journey. And so bringing it back to Nigeria, what we're going to be particularly focusing on for this set of issues around International Women's Day is your equivalent of our act, which is the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. And that has three components. There's a set of institutional frameworks to facilitate people trying to work against discrimination. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, criminalising discrimination. And thirdly, working with your Gender Commission to make sure that people are aware of their responsibilities and helping put in place these institutional frameworks and to ensure they act in accordance with the law. So that's a big focus for us through the activities around International Women's Day.
I hear you talk about the bill, but let's talk specifically about gender equality in the police. How have you progressed with that? Because we still have laws discriminating against women in our police force.
No, it's been a really big focus for us because we've been working with the Nigerian police over many years and actually have been instrumental in helping get the new Police Act passed. But as you say, that won't be helpful until we have a time where women as part of the police force themselves are not discriminated against. That's an absolute foundation in order for the Nigerian police to act responsibly and without discrimination against women in wider society. If they haven't got their own act together, they absolutely can't be out there policing on behalf of the public. So it is frankly disgraceful that it is still legal for a woman who has to lose her job as a police officer once she married. And I also understand that it's not possible for a woman police officer to stay at the local barracks with her husband. But of course, for a man, it's possible to do that. So it just means that it's very hard for women to enter the police force and to rise up the ranks. So you're losing out, therefore, on 50% of the very capable potential that you could have. And it's very important that the armed forces and the police forces more generally are representative of the people that they are policing. So we absolutely have to remove these ridiculous barriers, which are sort of a mark of traditional hierarchical, patriarchal society. And we'll be working very closely with the police to try and help them remove these barriers to women's advancement.
Okay, I hear you say you'll be working closely with the police force, but what about the Nigerian government? What role do you think that the government should be playing, and even the citizenship, in achieving gender equality in Nigeria?
Well, there's a number of dimensions to it, but starting with the law itself. So, as I say, it is absolutely critical that your National Assembly and the Senate passes the Gender and Equal Opportunities Act. And why is it being held up? Well, because there's a lot of vested interest amongst men who do not want to see, for example, 35% of women represented in politics. And that's just simply not acceptable. You know, we have to the male legislators, that it's absolutely in their interest, as much as the interests of Nigerian society, to have a fair representation of women in ranks. They will be helpful in helping them understand what women need from their parliamentarians. So I think at the moment there's a lot of resistance from men, but every time I meet the Speaker, and in fact I'm having dinner with the Speaker this evening, I will be raising this issue and repeatedly, as well my fellow diplomats, particularly the female heads of mission amongst us, to try and help people understand why it is in their interest, why it's in the interest of parliamentarians to be willing and open to have a fairer representation of women at senior levels in society. So passing the Act is step one. Perhaps even harder, though, is challenging these social norms that enable these cultural practices to continue. Child marriage, the way women are discriminated against in divorce and so on, land rights for women. These are all things that are accepted as part of Nigerian culture. But I say that there is no excuse for this. Women are entitled to be treated equally throughout all aspects of the law, for the benefit of society, and also simply because it's absolutely the right thing to do, to treat women with respect and to give them equal rights. So challenging those cultural practices is also going to be very important. And for that, we need to work with all aspects of society, including traditional rulers who are very influential on this. So challenging the law itself and then also the cultural practices. And if we can get both of those right, then I think we have a chance of moving this forward. And Nigeria must move forward. I mean, Nigeria is very low, is ranked at 133 out of 149 on the Global Gender Gap Index, and it's going down, not up. And frankly, that's disgraceful for a country of Nigeria's stature in Africa. It's really important that Nigeria starts to make progress on the Global Gender Equality Act as a country that should rightfully be taking its place as a leader in Africa and globally.